Welcome to the In Chamber, the place where we focus on the issues and people that shape business success. I'm your co-host, Rebecca Patrick. I'm the Senior Vice President of Communications for the Indiana Chamber of Commerce. Joining me at the microphone today is Anthony Shutley, our Director of Communications. In Chamber is presented by the Talent Resource Navigator. Today we're chatting with Scott Tucker, the co-president of Maple Leaf Farms in Leesburg in Kosciuszko County. Maple Leaf Farms is the recent winner of the Indiana Chamber's Coolest Thing Made in Indiana contest and produces upwards of 10 million white pekin ducks annually. Its products are available in all 50 states and distributed to more than 40 countries. In a given year, Maple Leaf Farms produces between 35% and 40% of the nation's duck supply. Scott, thank you for talking with us today.
Thanks, Rebecca. Great to be with you.
Scott, you and I spoke, I believe, about a year ago for a feature in our Biz Voice magazine. And the Maple Leaf Farm Stories is a very interesting one, how it all began. It was founded by your grandfather, Don Wetzel, in 1958. Was the original vision to take sales coast to coast in all 50 states as it is now? Or so when and how did that vision take shape?
Yeah, I don't really believe he envisioned it growing to the extent that it has today. His original vision was somewhat simple. You know, he prior to getting into ducks, he was in the feed business, and he had a number of his clients that were duck farmers on Long Island, where ducks were originally imported and grown. And he just always had this kind of thought in the back of his mind that why are they raising ducks on all of this expensive real estate a long ways away from their food source, which is corn and soybean here in the Midwest. So, you know, when he had that opportunity to kind of start playing in the duck business by moving back to his roots in Indiana, he was just this entrepreneur by nature. And he just saw an opportunity there. You know, he bought the processing plant in 1958 and really just, you know, got something off of the ground and saw a potential for it. But I really don't think the whole vision of growing this on a national or even an international basis began until my father was much more involved in it, you know, really into the 70s and even early 80s. And that's where, you know, he began to see the potential, you know, of taking duck beyond just, say, selling it in a whole form and doing what a lot of other poultry processors have done is value add, produce, you know, varying products from that whole and try to, you know, broaden that demand and consumption. And obviously I think we've been pretty successful in doing that.
Obviously, a lot has changed since 1958 with the business. What are some of the major changes? You touched on a little bit there, sort of the scope of what is done, but what are some of the major changes since it began?
Yeah, I think you know, the scope of the products that we are producing from you know, from this duck itself. You know, I joke a lot of times, you know, we're not in the assembly business, we're in the disassembly business. And so, you know, one of the keys to making money, you know, in our industry is, you know, when you make parts is how do you find markets for it? Where do you sell that? And so I think our reach in that regard, not only nationally, as you mentioned, in all 50 states, but internationally to at least 40 different countries currently, has been a major change for us. The other major change is, you know, where we have vertically integrated our business. And you see that, you know, in the poultry business oftentimes, but there may be no more vertically integrated poultry operation than Maple Leaf Farms. And the reason I say that is most times people in our business they focus on one of two areas. One is the breeding of the animal, or the growing and processing of the animal, turning it into a meat product. We do both. And we've done that, since the 70s. And so what that requires is tremendous investment, in terms of all of the breeding aspects and genetics of the animal. We're one of 4 primary breeders of ducks in the world. And through all of that work, we've produced a superior product, a very efficient product, a product that yields a lot of meat, and we do it in a very cost efficient manner. And that's one of the things that drives our ability to grow and maintain our profitability.
You mentioned growth. The company has, from a personnel standpoint, over 900 employees, I believe now, and a national sales footprint that we alluded to. What further growth plans are in store for the company? Where would you like to see things go in the near term and even beyond?
Yeah, we're working on a number of growth plans right now. Some of those revolve around, continued, further processing of duck products into any number of different formats, whether it's raw, cooked, marinated, portion controlled. Obviously, again, following somewhat, what other people in the poultry industry do, but I think actually through some of our own innovations, we're taking it even beyond that, into a number of even far-flung ideas. I won't give them all away because they're not out the door yet. I don't want to tip the competition. But and then the other real area of growth for us, as I mentioned about our genetics and all of the investment we've made, in terms of our genetic lines, in selling those genetics to other duck processors around the world. And we're in a circumstance right now where, unfortunately for the poultry industry, avian influenza has been devastating a number of poultry companies, including some of our brethren in the duck business. And I would say Europe has particularly been impacted by it. So we're seeing opportunities to sell our progeny or eggs on an international basis, to fulfill those restocking needs. And we just see continued growth going forward in that regard.
Most Hoosiers have at least a fundamental understanding of how technological farming and agriculture have come in recent decades and recent years. But I think most people, myself included, would think of, high-tech combines or, planting schedules and those sorts of things have become automated. How is technology, how does it play in raising ducks?
Well, it's significant, and it will grow even more significant in the coming years. It's everybody likes to, think of me as maybe a simple duck farmer, but when I'm involved with, geneticists on our payroll and trying to figure out how to make crossbreeds and improve performance. Those are sophisticated things, up to and including looking at work on the duck genome. So that gets very complicated from a production processing perspective. Due to all the challenges with the availability of labor, we continue to invest in automation solutions to reduce that dependence, on labor. It's hard to, produce at a consistent rate when people aren't showing up. And if you have enough automation, that becomes less of a concern. It's not that obviously you don't need, workers when you have automation, because they got to keep the machines running. You actually need a more sophisticated and educated person to do that. But if we're going to continue to grow with the rates that we intend to, we have to ensure that availability of processing time and capacity on a consistent basis.
Scott, what kind of tech talent have you had to bring on that maybe your grandfather never would have imagined? I mean, do you have software engineers and robotics people? What kind of tech talent do you need, and where do you find it?
We rely on a lot of outside contractors and talent to do that. We do have some of our own software engineers and people in here, but we're trying to adapt to some of the solutions that exist in the industry, because a lot of that has already been developed, if you will, for some of the bigger poultry operations, say in chicken and turkey. So in a lot of cases, and while duck is not a waterproof chicken, if you will, to make a long-standing joke, there are ways that you can adapt those technologies to support what we do.
Scott, I don't want to overstep another question we may have later, but I was curious about something. I'm pleading ignorance. Is your duck branded Maple Leaf Farms? And is there a loyalty to that brand?
Yeah, we did some branding work. It's been a few years ago now, but at the time, and this was comparing branded poultry products across the country. So you think about names like Tyson, a number of those larger names. At the time, we were the 6th most recognized poultry brand in the United States, which I think, to your point, I think that speaks to our marketing efforts. And, we have some unique things that we do, that help us kind of continually, put our name out there. Maybe our most successful is, our menu mention program, whereby, we will pay an operator, restaurateur, to brand their menu with our name next to their duck product. And it's not a lot of money in some cases, but it just brings immediate brand recognition to Maple Leaf. I can't tell you how many times I get a text from one of my friends in some far-flung place, and they're sending me a picture of the menu that has Maple Leaf Farms on it. I say, thank you, you're now part of our marketing cabal. So
now a quick word about our sponsor. The Talent Resource Navigator is a new free online tool that offers the convenience of one-stop shopping for education and job training opportunities. Supported by on-demand customer service and technical assistance, the Navigator intentionally guides and connects individuals and employers with a tailored set of talent development resources based on each user's identified needs. Details at talentresourcenavigator.com.
Two things, Scott, that we hear loudly from business leaders are workforce development, sort of the woes there with having enough qualified workers and those talent pipeline challenges, as well as the impact inflation's having on their business and their consumers. So I wanted to get your opinion on sort of the best practices of each of those. Is your workforce capacity, is it back to where it was at least, or where it's comfortable? And so what are your recruiting strategies?
Yeah, we've fortunately, we are near to what our staffing targets were prior to the pandemic. So which will enable us to get back to the pre-pandemic production levels. And that's taken a tremendous amount of re-engineering within our human resources area, focusing on talent recruitment, trying to fill our pipeline on a consistent basis. We've had some fits and starts in that regard, but we've made some significant efforts in that regard. And in tandem with that, we recognize we need to do more workforce development. We need to do those things that help generate a better connection and consequently, retention of this employee base that we're bringing in. So we're ramping up those plans, as we speak right now. And we've been fortunate. Some of this is, our own recruiting. Some of it has been done through contract production as a necessity. And there are positives and negatives, obviously, through doing that. And so you got to try to find, I think, a balance between, the variety of sources there from a labor pool standpoint. But, currently we're in good shape.
And how has the company dealt with inflation concerns?
It's kind of a combination of a couple factors that really have kind of worked in our favor. I mean, I mentioned to you, before that our industry is dealing with avian influenza, particularly with duck producers, which has created some supply, reductions in the industry. So we have an increased demand, which has allowed us to pass along pricing, some of that pricing to help offset those inflationary factors that we're dealing with. And we are dealing with them in almost anything that you can think of, from obviously wages to even strange things that you would never even think about, carbon dioxide in the production of things. We use orange sauce to add to our whole body ducks, when we ship those out. So it's we've had to really try to quantify and obviously work with longstanding suppliers to keep that inflation somewhat in check. But it's really the tremendous efforts by our sales and marketing staff continuing to drive the value of our product and why it continues to be worth it to purchase it even at increased prices.
Rebecca, if I might ask a quick follow-up question, I just caught something. Scott, did you say inflation has impacted carbon dioxide? You have to buy carbon dioxide?
Yeah.
What does one do with carbon dioxide on a duck farm?
You're making dry ice with that. So it's crazy that the things that we have, and it's not even just pricing. There've been supply chain issues related to a number of these items that we just never would have anticipated. So I give a lot of kudos to our purchasing staff, who just work tirelessly to make sure that we have availability of the stuff and finding new suppliers and qualifying new suppliers. I mean, it's almost a full-time effort, and certainly was, amidst of the last couple of challenging years.
I think the last couple of years, really, whether it's been the pandemic or now the inflation and supply chain issues, it really helps to have a strong foundation with any business and the ability to be nimble. But that's really been brought to the forefront. I've heard you say with a chuckle a couple times that you're the third generation the third generation of family leadership at the company is typically the ones that screws things up, and you're the third generation. But clearly, that's not happened there. Things are going well.
Yeah.
Tell us about your journey with the business when you started working there. And I know there are members of the fourth generation who are already starting their careers at Maple Leaf Farms.
Yeah, I started in well, if I have to be, really honest, back in the days when you could work before you were 18 years of age, I started here mowing yards and cleaning out duck barns and doing lots of manual labor. Went to Purdue University, got a business degree, came back to Maple Leaf, started in the sales side of our business, really to understand the core of it. Kind of moved back internally into a number of other roles in customer service and distribution, in marketing. Left the business for a little bit to get an MBA, and then came back in my current role. So I've been in this for now 22 years. So that's really the way my father encouraged us to get involved, is to learn it from that ground floor, to understand what goes into it at all levels, because it's a more complex business than what most people would think. And so that's given me a real great grounding in terms of not only what all is involved, but what the people go through in terms of getting those jobs done. And that's something certainly I think we've encouraged with the fourth generation who's coming on. There are four members of that here currently working for us. My two children are. My brother has. Oh, I'm sorry, it's five now. That just increased here not too long ago. My brother has two, and then my sister has one involved in the business as well. And we're trying to give them those same kinds of experiences going forward, and see where their interests and their strengths lie, because that's what it comes down to, is getting people doing what they're interested in, and maybe ultimately what they love, and that's what's going to help the business to thrive going forward.
I believe you and your brother are co-presidents, correct, of the company. Is that the sort of format that you sort of envision going forward with the next generation? And have there been talks yet of who might be elevated from that group, or is that succession planning still a ways away?
Yeah, that's still in process. That's as you can guess, that's complicated, and we work with a number of family business consultants, to help do that, and to help kind of map out how we might do that kind of succession planning. And but they're all somewhat young still. The oldest, my son Zach, is 33, so they still have a little time, and they're not going to kick me out of the saddle just yet. So,
Scott, I wanted to ask you about Maple Leaf Farms, quote unquote, super secret farms. I'm teasing our listeners to stay with us because I think that's a really interesting aspect. But before I ask you about that, I wanted to go back a half a step, and I didn't want to gloss over. I thought that you had said in answering Rebecca's inflationary question that some of those costs have been offsetted by the increased demand in duck. I'm just kind of wondering what's, for the uninitiated, including myself, how much has demand gone up, and what's pushing that forward?
Well, our demand went up, double digits in 22, which traditionally is not the case. We typically do, mid to high single digit, growth on a year-to-year basis. Obviously, the avian influenza issues in the industry helped in that regard, and so we bid in the right place at the right time, frankly, with the ability to respond having the labor availability and the capacity, and then obviously having the capacity of our contract producers to increase that production. So sometimes, or I should say most times, I'd rather be lucky than good.
So without further ado, and in Rebecca's recent Biz Voice story spotlighting your company, you did reference the Super Secret Farms, which immediately caught my attention. They're up in northern Indiana, where the company works on sophisticated genetic breeding programs. So I know, in having previously been a manufacturing reporter, that manufacturers can be really cloak and dagger. I mean, they can be beyond secretive and protective of their trade secrets. And I'm wondering if it's the same in the food production industry.
Well, yeah, there's definitely an element of that. Obviously in a processing environment where, take into consideration the duck industry is not very large relative to the other poultry producers. So some of that technology is shared, so maybe not as proprietary, but there are some unique things about duck that are in a processing environment. The real, more secretive, and more closely guarded, aspects of our business, it revolve around our genetics, how we do that, our genetic breeds, and really how do we continue to improve upon those, while not losing our own competitive advantage, and yet be able to sell those progeny, to other people. We try not to do it, obviously, to competitors, but in some cases where it makes sense, we might even do that. But you need to maintain that, competitive advantage. It's almost a natural advantage through successive generations of, breeding improvement, in our genetic line. So, we keep those things very close to the vest, and we certainly don't give away the best stuff, if you will.
Scott, paint us a picture of the competitive landscape of duck production. First of all, compare it to the chicken market. I'm just curious by size, and then after you do that, surely other ag and food production operators have noted Maple Leaf Farms' success. I'm wondering if there are other companies that are trying to take your market share, knock you out of the nest, run you out of the pond, whatever the appropriate metaphor is there. And what are you guys doing to stay on top? So I think I asked about 6 questions there. So take a shot at it.
I'll do my best to recap there. So just kind of a competitive landscape here. In North America, there's probably 27 to 28 million ducks produced on an annual basis. So 10 million, we're doing in that, and that fluctuates a little, but it's around that, 30 to 40%. Now in other world markets, there's even more production. The China market in and of itself produces 4 billion ducks annually. So when you look at duck as a whole, particularly in North America, as I like to joke, we're kind of a small pond. Maple Leaf's kind of the big duck on it, but it's still a small pond. For chicken, for instance, there's just hundreds of billions of chickens produced annually. Just for interest, Americans probably eat it's approaching 100 pounds of chicken a year, and we eat about half a pound of duck a year. So on a per capita basis, so that just kind of gives you a flavor of those differences there. We're still a small niche industry. So, yeah, are there people that notice us and want to knock us off our perch. Yeah, we have competitors. We have some very good competitors, that, I think in some cases try to emulate what we're doing. In some cases are, venturing out and doing their own unique things. So, and we get along for the most part, and we can do things that are supportive to each other, and at other times we're battling it in the marketplace. So it's it feels a lot kind of smaller as an industry, and so that kind of makes it fun. But yeah, do we get noticed by some of the bigger people, and do we have people that are interested in our company at times? Sure, but we're going to continue to be a family business for many years to come.
Well, Maple Leaf Farms won the Coolest Thing Made in Indiana competition with your fully cooked roast half duck. You talked a little bit here and there about some of your other offerings, but tell us a little bit more about some of the other food products and also non-food products that you make.
Oh yeah. So if there's a duck product made in the United States, we probably make it. We have innovated in any number of ways in that sphere of making value-added duck products, including raw breasts, legs, duck leg confit, pulled meat products, obviously the cooked products. That roast half duck is really kind of one of our flagship products. We obviously sell a number of byproducts from the production process. We make a wide variety of appetizers, as kind of that maybe first foray for somebody who isn't familiar with duck to try, and maybe it doesn't feel like as much of a commitment. But beyond just the meat aspects of duck, as I mentioned previously, one of the real values of producing duck is that all that's on the outside, the feathers and the down, are actually worth something compared to chicken and turkeys. So many years ago, we were just selling the feathers and down to other merchants, people that would make bedding and garments out of them. And with the help of an operation in Grand Rapids, Michigan, we begun manufacturing our own bedding products. And this is called the Eurasia Feather Group. And then one of the subsidiaries is called Down Incorporated. And then through Down Inc., we actually merchandise things like down pillows, comforters, deco pillows, things of that nature, to say hospitality accounts, hotels, inns, B&Bs. We sell it through retailers like Crate and Barrel, Room and Board, as well as we have a catalog where we focus on selling those types of products to whether it be consumers or interior decorators and designers, where we can customize those and send them, unique products exactly the way that they like them, and that's become a significant part of our business. So, and again, beyond that, we've taken and expanded our sales of genetics, not only domestically but internationally. We've actually established operations in China, whereby we have duck progeny on the ground and sell those to other major duck producers in that country. And so it's always about trying to find those additional markets and growth opportunities and showing value for what we've done and where we've made all those investments over many years.
For those who haven't tried duck before, or maybe a little hesitant, what's sort of the biggest myth that you might want to dispel, and what's so great about Maple Leaf Farms duck that they should try?
Yeah, unfortunately, there are still a few of those myths lingering around that we continue to try to knock down. Back 20, 30 years ago, we would talk about, oh, it's fatty and it's greasy. People would be concerned about that. They'd be concerned about, taking one home and burning it up and having their house filled with smoke. And today that just really isn't the case. I mean, we've, through our genetic programs, have made a much leaner product with less fat. Obviously we've provided, value-added products that are a lot easier to make, including a fully cooked product. So you could take our coolest thing made in Indiana, the roast half duck, thaw it and pop it in your oven, and 23 minutes later, you have roast duck for dinner, with no smoke, and the house is not on fire. So,
all good things there.
Yeah, we've innovated in any number of ways to just move past some of those myths. Obviously we feed it corn and soybeans, so it tastes very nice. It almost tastes somewhat sweet, if you can believe that.
Let's close with sort of your distribution. Talk a little bit about that, and where can the average consumer buy it?
Well, fortunately, we continue to expand on our distribution. We sell in all 50 states. We have a significantly growing retail presence for our product. We sell it in all the major retailers across the country. The Walmarts, the Krogers, the Aldis, the Publix, and many others. As well, we have a significant presence in upscale and kind of casual restaurants. Obviously not so much in the fast food or anything of that nature, but if duck is on the menu somewhere, probably 90% of the time that is going to be our product.
Great. That's the last question that we have. Thank you again for joining us. We appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
In Chamber is presented by the Talent Resource Navigator. As always, thank you for listening.